Thank you so much, Rhonda, for that warm introduction. And I'm just thrilled to have the opportunity to present to you on a topic that is near and dear to my heart and that I feel very passionate about. And it's all about establishing rapport and trust. And as you can see on the opening slide, this can be done in moments, as it says. And when it's done well, this really does last a lifetime. I'm sure many of you have taken courses on listening. You've thought about this topic a lot, and I'm sure you're very skilled at it. And it clearly is foundational. And many of us have been taught active listening, leaning forward and making eye contact, right? Not talking when other people are talking, conveying that you're listening through minimal encouragers and body language or repeating back what you've heard. But I want to talk to you about it today in a completely different way that I think is more practical in a lot of ways. And it's these three levels of listening. So we're going to talk about 1, 2, and 3, listening to reply, listening to understand, and listening for what's not being said. So when we talk about listening to reply, and again, this can be an occupational hazard, I'm afraid. It's about forming the answer when the other person's talking. And often it's about feeling like we have to show that we're smart enough, that we have something to add, that we have this value that we're providing to the client or the customer. And so we're not fully listening. We're just forming in our head, how are we going to respond to this? As a professional, I want you to think about how you can step back and not do that. And here's the key. You want to make sure that you recognize that you're bringing value by simply being a connected human being. You know, during the pandemic, I think more than ever, we've recognized this need for connection with one another. And here's your opportunity in the way you listen. If you are ever in perhaps your marriage or another personal relationship, you ever hear someone say, you aren't listening to me, you're listening at level 1. This is what happens when we listen at level 1. Level 2 is about listening to understand. This is obviously a better level to listen to. You can see the relationship is developing as you're doing this. This requires you to slow down, to pause, to ask clarifying questions, and to be present. Now, be present is a funny word, a funny expression, because you may say, well, what exactly does that mean? We know it when we feel it, when somebody is actually there with us and present. You can do this in an instant with someone. You could do this in the grocery store with the clerk that you are interacting with. You can simply be present on what that person is saying and doing in an instant. That's why we say this is about having these skills in an instant that can build a very connected relationship. Think about how you feel when someone listens to you at that level. Again, just take a moment, think about someone who listens to you, who's present with you, who you know is there. They don't interrupt you. They're pausing. These people are gifts in our lives because for most of us, we have very few of these people who are really able to do this with us. If you do this, you will see your professional and personal relationships transform. But there's a third level, builds on everything we just talked about. And it's about listening for what's not being said. So again, this is about building on level 2. And when I say listening for what's not being said, you may say, well, what the heck does that mean? This is about reading body language. This is about thinking about what that person may be feeling in what they're doing. This is about asking about how someone is feeling when you're having a conversation with them. This is what's key, to go to level 3 whenever you can. And I'm going to give you an example of the difference between level 2 and level 3 and why this matters. This was actually a financial service professional I knew, really respected. And I was sitting in on a team meeting that was happening with a client, with the client's permission for me to be there. I was observing. And it was clear to me that this advisor and the client had an excellent relationship. The client was older. The client was in her 70s. And the advisor knew the client's family and asked lots of questions about the kids. And as they were doing things, it was nice rapport going back and forth. And I was watching this, very impressed with what was happening. At the end of the meeting, as the advisor had wrapped things up for her part of the meeting, the client mentioned that she was taking a trip to Italy to see her mother. Now I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, okay, this woman's in her 70s. I wonder how old her mom is. And the advisor had already checked out. So she was listening to the content, but she was not listening at level 3 at all. And so when the the client said, "I'm going to Italy to see my mom," the advisor said, "Oh, have a great trip. When you get back, well, I'd love to hear all about it." And she's kind of looking down and, folding her papers like this. And I watched the client's face, and this was clearly not a happy trip. I could read the body language instantly, and so would the advisor if she'd looked up. And so I went over to the client after, as we were walking out, and I said, "How's your mom doing?" And she went, "Oh, my mom has dementia. I'm not even sure she'll recognize me. I think this may be the last time I see my mom." Well, you can imagine, I stood there for just a moment. It was very quick. And I said, "I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine how hard this trip must be for you." She said, "It's really a tough trip." We probably had a 30-second to 1-minute interaction. It wasn't very long, but there was a connection made. And that advisor missed it. She missed that golden opportunity to pick up on that one thing that would have made a deeper connection. Now, that's a long term relationship. You may have long term relationships with clients, or you may have customers. That interaction that I just told you about could happen in a moment. You could be standing having a conversation with somebody, and they mention they're going to Italy to see their mom because it comes out. And if you're watching body language, you would have picked up on that. And you would have also probably thought, this is not a young woman I'm talking to. How old is her mother? And so by just asking a simple question of how is your mom doing, it made the connection. That's listening at level 3. Now, I want you to know I don't always do this well, but that just happened to be a moment where I was able to step in and do something that the advisor didn't do. Okay. Your goal is obviously to listen at level 3. So now, everything we do and everything that I like to teach, I want it to be practical. I want you to have an opportunity to put it into action right away. So I'm going to ask you to do 2 things, and you're going to get a key takeaway sheet after this, and you will see these and an exercise sheet that will have all these listed. I'm going to encourage you to spend 1 day observing how you get listened to in your life. Notice how it feels. And then I'm going to ask you to spend another day, just 1 day for each of these. Observe the level of listening that you do with people and notice people's responses based on how you listen. You can do this personally. You can do this with your clients and customers, whatever works for you. But watch the difference when you listen at different levels and how people respond to that. This is one of those things I try to practice a lot. And so again, I am aware when I am in the grocery store and I'm interacting with the grocery store clerk, or I'm in the dry cleaner or doing something, to really focus in on the person and watch the connection. And I know for me, what it's meant is that I feel much more connected to the service providers who are in my world. Now, imagine what it would mean to your business if you started listening at this level.